G'day crew, welcome back. I'm Todd, this is Toxic Garage Customs and you're in my assembly and disassembly workshop. So what have I been up to? Well, you might notice behind me we have FrankenInter, who's always there, but FrankenInter is missing a motor because it's on the ground. FrankenInter is also missing a chassis because it's in the bin. But what I have immediately behind me is a shiny new reassembled chassis. Check it out. Why don't you grab yourself an adult beverage or a warm cuppa, and you know where this is going, find a comfy chair, put your feet up and watch what I've been doing. And I will grab you at the end. See you then. We're about 3 or 4 days down the track now. I had a good weekend, been pretty busy helping Sam with some stuff and had Josh over and some friends visited. So I've given this a sand. I've given it a scuff back with maroon Scotch-Brite, which is equivalent to about 600. As I mentioned, I've bolted on various things like bump stops and so on, various brackets. They've all been sanded on the insides as well. So it's all been cleaned down. So this edge primer you can't clean with wax and grease remover because it melts it. So I've just gone over it with glass cleaner and a good blowdown, and I've cleaned my workshop area up as good as I need to for a chassis. And I've got these odds and sods sorted as well, so the other things that you've seen. So everything is ready for some paint. I want a satin finish on everything, so this is what I'm going to be finishing off with, a 2K satin. I don't think that's going to be enough. As you can see, it's been sitting in my cupboard for a little while. I don't think that's going to be enough to do the chassis and the parts, so I'm going to do completely the wrong thing, and I'm going to mix brands and species. So this is actually, I believe, a gloss black, and what I am going to do, I think, is go through and give everything a coat of gloss black in the first place, and then I'm going to very quickly just rinse my gun out. I'm going to finish everything off with satin black. I did consider mixing the two together and sort of getting a more glossy satin or a satiny gloss sort of look. But if I run short of paint, I think I'm going to have trouble matching that gloss level again. Whereas if I put my first coat on with gloss and then finish off with the satin, then I get the satin look and I get the build from the gloss. The only thing that I hope is I don't have a chemical incompatibility. I did look at the tins and I looked at the details. They look pretty much the same. The ingredients seem to be pretty much the same, so I'm pretty confident. The only thing I could see on the technical data sheet that was different was the recommended air pressure. So that's not a biggie. So I'll put some of that down. I'll let it flash off for 5 to 10. It's a bit late, probably about 10:30 in the morning. I've been waiting because it's winter and it's cool, and it's now up to about 15 or 16 degrees Celsius, so I can work with that. I was going to use a normal hardener, but I think I'm going to use a fast hardener just because of the cold weather. And yeah, so I'll go from there. So I think I'll just bring you back in once I've painted it. Okay, well hopefully the audio is not terrible because I obviously have a mask on. I've got the first coat of gloss black on everything and I think it's coming up great. If you're wondering why I'm using gloss black and not satin black, why I'm using satin black and not gloss black as the finish, I just prefer it. It doesn't show up as many imperfections and I just like the look. Of mixed paint I used 500ml, so that was the 5 measure on the cup with the 2 to 1 with a 5 measure of the hardener, and I used about 10% reducer, and it's come up well. And it was exactly the right amount of paint. So by the time I mix up some more paint, this will have flashed off sufficiently to be able to put the second coat on, and that'll be it. The black etch primer really helped it cover nicely, and as I said, if I get chips or scratches in it, then hopefully it'll just show black etch primer underneath. Okay, our satin's been down for an hour now, and I just touched it a second ago, left a little fingerprint in it, so it's still not touch dry, but it's looking very nice. It'll probably satin out a little bit more. I hope it does, because it's a little bit glossier than what I like. I can't remember if I've used this particular satin paint before or not, because all paints aren't equal, as in their sheen levels. So we'll wait and see, but it may satin out a bit more as it dries, but at the end of the day it's a chassis. Now I want to point out, if you look closely, you can see where there was paint that I didn't sand flat and all the rest of it on areas. I keep saying it's a chassis, it's going to look great. These parts over here all drying out nicely as well. So same thing. Seems a bit crazy painting the inside and outside of brackets that hold on springs and stuff like that, but you only reap what you sow, as they say. So what I'm working on at the moment is the front springs. So I was sanding them, as I've mentioned before. I like to paint them silver. I was sanding them because this one's the worst, but this one, if you look carefully at it, you can actually see flaking paint or powder coating or whatever it is underneath here. So that's why I was sanding it, but I'm actually thinking I might try and paint strip them. I don't know if it'll work or not, so I'll throw some paint stripper on those, and if it does, then that'll be good. I'll give them a clean up, and then they'll just come up a bit better. Again, their spring's not going to be seen. They'll be seen very rarely, but I don't want the paint that I put on to flake off over the top of that. And the sway bar. So I put it in etch primer the other day, and I've just thrown some silver engine paint on it, metallic silver paint. Why? Because it was in the cupboard. So that's what the springs will look like as well. So I think it'll look nice with the black. Look at this glorious day, will you? Beautiful. Okay, I'll paint strip. Yeah, a little update. So about 15 or 20 minutes later, I've put a really good thick coating of paint stripper on those. I had them sitting. The other one's just outside there. I was going to pressure wash it, but I'm not sure if I will. And yeah, the paint's stripping off. It's not a quick process because it's a fiddly thing and there's a bit of length to it and you've got to get to all the sides and that, but the reality is the paint stripper's doing the job. So if you ever decide to paint your King springs, then just know that you can paint strip the paint off. I'll paint strip it, I'll clean them. I think I'll put some metal conditioner, phosphoric acid on them, wash that off, all that sort of stuff, and I'll put some etch primer on it, and then I'll paint them. The reason I'll put the phosphoric acid on them is there's a little bit of rust on them, just in spots, and it'll just help to get rid of that. And I'll give it a scrub with a green Scotch, just with a Scotch-Brite when I'm doing that, so I'll come up all right. And I can put them in the car, they can get scratched and no one can ever see them again. But I'll know. Well, I guess this is the next thing to paint. So I've given it a soak with some truck wash and I'm just about to pressure wash it. And then after a while I'll rip the wheels off and rip the drums off because I've got to completely rebuild the brakes as well. Interesting things to show you there. They've been assembled incorrectly. But I've got all new wheel cylinders and shoes and everything, so that's okay. And once I've built those, then I'll put it all back together. I'll give it an etch prime and we'll give it a coat of paint. Then I guess it'll be ready to put back in. We've got everything else prepped. Do you ever question your own sanity? No? Well, if you want to put your sanity to the test, make the choice to paint strip some coil springs off the front of your car. Then you'll start questioning your sanity. But let's have a look at them. Oh, look. Springs with no paint on them. Well, that was a ridiculous undertaking. They're nearly there. All I got to do is give them a sand, chuck some etch primer on them, not etch primer, what's the stuff called? Phosphoric acid, and go from there, like I said before. If you're thinking of doing this, don't. Maybe I could put that back on. Well, I got a good couple of coats of etch primer on that and dried it off with my hairdryer. I like to keep a hairdryer handy in case I have a surprise visit from someone and I need to make myself look good. The undressing. So I've taken the tape off the ball joints and the bushes and so on and exposed the threads on various things. I don't like to paint those, it just makes them hard to put the bolts back on. So my process is just to use a razor blade, pick up the edge of the tape or cut it, whatever is necessary, and unpeel it. Sometimes because you've got so much paint on it, it can be a bit hard to find the end of it. But as I said, I just like to leave the rubber looking like rubber rather than looking like shiny paint. And I just think it makes a big difference to the overall effect that it looks like someone's taken some care when they've done the job rather than just slapped paint over everything. Which, while I've got paint over everything I wanted to, there was no doubt about it, I certainly didn't slap it around. And I think the end product speaks for itself. I really like when I go to work on my own cars, or if someone else has to work on it, like a wheel aligner or someone like that, or even the person doing rego inspections, when they look underneath and they see this, I think it makes me feel good, because I don't like working on dirty old cars, ironically, and it makes me feel good when someone else can see the care that's been put into the job. So I've got to go inside for my dinner, so I've just been alerted. Where's the nut? But I've got to fit these ball joints, so I think after dinner I'll come out, fit those ball joints up, and these are done. Looking good. Righto, just got to put these upper control arm ball joints in. So they just drop down from the top here like that, and then I put the bolts in from the top. They don't come with a spring washer, so I don't fit one on there, but I do use some Loctite on the threads there. So just on there, and for whatever reason they send these out in with metric hardware. They're 10mm. So I just put a bit of Loctite on those, just enough to stop the nut coming undone. Might be just enough because I think I'm running out. Might have some more. Don't need a lot of this stuff anyway. So we'll just get those on, then I'll nip them up. Got to make sure the ball joint's sitting nice and flat and flush, which it should be. As I said earlier, I don't know if they have grease in them. I suspect they don't. They often don't. So we will grease it up. I'll actually make a little note for myself to grease it. I won't grease it until I assemble the thing. And I'll put the large nut on the ball joint just with the split pin going through it, just so I don't lose it. So nip those up and we should be pretty right to go. these are the things that take the time. Okay, so 5 minutes later, I got some nuts. They're not high tensile, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to survive. And I was looking for some washers. Do you think I could find two the same? Now, that's the way my brain works. Well, I did. I found two the same. This one and that one, sort of the same. So I'll be able to sleep at night now because I've got two washers that look something the same. Let's finish putting this thing on. Well, I'll finish putting it on. You don't need to watch me do that. When I'm restoring things, renovating them, getting them ready, I like to clean up all the threads and everything so that when I go to assemble the thing, it's ready to go. I also like to find the hardware. This shackle's a bit pitted. It's still got plenty of steel, but it's not great, so I'll be finding a replacement for that one. The other one's okay. I've shown before, but this is the rear shackle bushes. They're all the same. There's 8 of them that go on the rear. So I've already got half of them in the spring, in the leaf spring, so that in preparation for when the time comes, I'll have them on the shackles ready to go, so I can literally just pick up parts and know that everything's there. I've got everything sorted and so on. So that should really go like that. But when I put that there, I'm not going to be able to put the washer and the spring washer in there without compressing the bush, and I don't want to compress the bush until it is time to fit it. So I'll just leave it where it is at the moment. Get my hardware ready. Of course, I forgot to paint the nuts and washers. They have been phosphoric acided, but I will give those a paint. So that stuff there is also ready to go. So not many more things to do that I've already painted that I can get ready. So I've got my spindles or stub axles, whatever you want to call them. I've got 2 sets, 2 from left and right from the original chassis and left and right from the new chassis. And what I've got is that, well, I guess starting with this one here, this is off the new chassis. This is quite pitted and corroded through here. It's still usable, but it's not pitted, it's just got some corrosion there. It's not actually in a contact area, so it's not a real big issue. It's a little bit damaged around here, completely usable. Whereas the other one, which has still got the steering arm bolted to it, that's why it looks a bit different, it's in better condition, so that's a no-brainer. This one will be used for that side, and then on the other side, this is from the new chassis. It's pretty good. Threads are all good, seems okay. So that's off the new chassis and off the old chassis. Got this one, which is also not too bad. It's got a bit of burring up here. It's like this bearing's been spinning or something. So I think what we're going to do is use this one off the new chassis and this one off the old chassis. And we'll make a pair out of those. Now, as I have mentioned previously, you've got long and short steering arms. And I have shown you that, but let's just grab one. Well, let's grab 2. So I've painted the new ones up, or should I say the ones I'm going to be using. I've painted those up because these are what I need for power steering. So they're shorter by about 50mm or so. So this will be going onto there, and that will be going onto there. I'll give those a paint. I've got all new bearings and all that sort of stuff. I've just tried to leave everything assembled just in case. And so I need to clean this up. I've already cleaned the other one up. But I'll do everything to those that I've done to everything else. And then I can assemble that. And we've got those components. The only thing out of the front end that's going to prevent me from putting it together is the springs, because they're not yet painted. But other than that, all good. Having said that, I still need to paint the underside of the chassis. So we've got time. New day, new weather conditions. That's life in the big smoke. Okay, so yesterday, massive day. I think I ended up doing about 14 or 15 hours. That was the day I painted all this and everything else. I ended up staying in here and started preparing the motor to be stripped out. So I've taken the exhaust off, disconnected the steering, taken the steering box off, disconnected the radiator, etc. So I'm going to put the pan back on the transmission because these don't have a drain plug. So I've got to take the pan off to drip it out, empty it out. Managed to get transmission fluid in a few places. So I put the pan back on and then lower the car back down, rip the radiator out, and I'll see if I could be bothered walking out in the rain and getting my engine crane. I might start pulling it out. I was thinking that if I get it out, then I can start working on the body, then I can start working on the subframe and so on. I've got a million things ready to paint and disassembling other stuff. So I guess I need to do something. Well, that was easy enough. That was great actually, because I built the car around the chassis with the motor already in it. So I'd never taken it out before. And other than the obvious things like taking the radiator out so you don't put the fan through it, not too bad. I didn't feel that I was going to bend or scratch anything, which at the moment, like I have built that radiator support and painted it, but nothing is in finished paint. So I'm happy that I can take it out without destroying the place. I did take the battery tray out, which I had put in anyway, so that was easy enough. Wasn't sure whether I was going to have to take the bonnet latches off, but they were all good. And what is even more rewarding about that, comforting about that, is that this has got power steering and air conditioning. No, it hasn't. It's got power steering and it's got an alternator. So it's really wide across the front. So it fits in the engine bay really well, but it came out nicely. Haven't got a brake master cylinder on it, so it wasn't in the way. But this is what we're looking at. So this is the crappy, dirty old engine bay, that is. So there's not a lot left in there. And if you hadn't worked out, I'd already undone all the bolts and everything previously. So very happy with that. So what I intend to do now, I'm just going to put the motor somewhere where I can trip over it constantly and get annoyed with it. I already tripped over it and bent the vacuum pipe from the transmission, but that's okay. Little tips of the trade. Empty all your fluids out first. That's just a little bit of coolant that was in the engine. That's why I emptied the transmission out. Common trick. Don't empty the transmission, lift it up, the fluid goes everywhere. Learn from that one. Didn't happen to me because I emptied it really thoroughly. Okay, so there's really not much left in here, because what I intend to do next is remove the cab, front clip and everything from the chassis, and then I'm going to cut the chassis up. I'll strip every last piece off it that I think I might want. There's not much left on it. So take the fuel tank out. There's some fuel pipes and brake pipes. Won't be using the brake pipes. Probably use the fuel pipes because I made those originally. Take little brackets like these off. Might even cut off the leaf spring hangers, perches, whatever you call them, for a future build. No matter what it is, they might come in handy. Yeah, there's not much left to do. I will lighten the load. Well, maybe I won't. I was going to say I might lighten the load and take the seat out, but I probably won't. I think I'll just work out some method of lifting the cab off the chassis, and I think it's going to be a case of lifting it up, undoing some bolts to separate the cab from the subframe that I made, lowering it back down, putting the chassis onto a trailer so I can wheel it out, and then lifting the cab up, maybe through the window with a piece of timber through there, lift it, try not to bend the doors, and I'll bring something like a ratchet strap or something forward to the front to lift it there. I have done that before, and it actually isn't good for this area here, not on this truck, but on my Chev. So I've got to be careful not to when I do that. So I may just support most of the weight there and just balance it with this. Let's see how that goes. For those of you doing a cab swap, as I said, regardless of whether it's an International or a Chev or a Bedford or something like that, I think you can do pretty much the same method. So what I've done, I've used the original radiator support mounting points on each side, so on the chassis, so the same rubber mounts and everything. And I used, in this case, the original radiator support, but modified it with this. My radiator bolts in a couple of points, just 4 points, sits in there nice and flush. And then what I have is that I've designed it in such a way so that the radiator support holds the radiator, but it also holds up all the front panel work. So it's braced across the bottom there, and so it holds on the front mud guards and holds on the grille. And exactly the same as the way a Holden does. So I've just duplicated that. This is not the prettiest thing in the world, and I may get excited and remake it. It took me quite a long time to make it, and at the end of it, it worked absolutely fine, but it's not very pretty. I did make that particular mount there unboltable. Just found it easier to install it and take it out and so on. So it's all pretty good. So that mount's there, and then see if we can see down the front here. That is actually the original Holden mounting points, and that's where my subframe bolts on each side. I'll show you that from underneath as well. And you'll see it in far more detail once we pull the subframe off and bolt it onto the new chassis. In a video quite a long time ago, I roughed in the booster. So I've got the firewall all cut, reinforced and so on. Nothing's finished, so please don't judge me on that. It's just there, and the same with the steering column. It's all held together with tech screws, excuse me, tech screws and things at the moment. I've got to finish welding, clean it up, make up a plate for this area, but it is all mounted in place, and I'll show you that in more detail later. Okay, got it on the trailer, got it strapped down so it doesn't tip up. Most of the weight is over the back of the trailer, so I was in fear of it tipping up. So when I was positioning it on there, I had jack stands underneath the back of it, and then I put a trolley jack there. It's a bit precarious because the back of the trailer where I've got it supported isn't very strong, so I've got a block of timber under there. So at the moment it's sitting on the trailer. I can roll it backwards and forwards on the trailer, which is fabulous. But I have hit a roadblock. Anyone know what it is? How about, that's as far as my voice goes up. So I don't know how I'm going to lift it. It's sitting too high because it's on the trailer. So a bit of an oversight on my part. I think what I'm going to do is undo everything I've just done, lift it all back up again, and just sit it straight on the ground and then disassemble it there, and then I'll be able to lift the cab off. So oversight on my part, but hey, you live and learn. I won't do that again. I have got a dolly down the back that is only a couple of 100 mil off the ground, which probably might have been a good choice, but hindsight's a wonderful thing. I think I need a cup of coffee, and then I think I'll lift it, put it back on, put the hoist back under the chassis, lift it up, take the trailer out, drop it on the ground, and do everything I just said. Let's see, after my 35th attempt, if I can get this off. I literally got the engine out about 5 times faster than it's taken to lift the cab off the chassis. Okay, that's as high as we can go, folks. Luckily I've got it on a jack at the front. So what I didn't show you, I got it on a jack at the front. I got it on a trailer axle at the back. Toing and froing, I just couldn't get the thing up off. Couldn't get the arms swung around to fit into the doors of the cab without moving the cab backwards. It was just one thing after the other, quite frankly. But that's okay, because we're at this point. We came up with a plan. Okay, so a little bit of forethought and undoing those bolts while it was on the hoist would have been a good idea, but I didn't. So I've taken 2 bolts out from there, 2 from there, 1 from there, 1 from there, and I've actually got to undo that one and that one. They're my own points. So on a Holden 1-tonner, the cab mounts onto the back of these points here. So the cab comes across, and then bolts come out here, rubber mounts, and they mount to the back of the cab. I did that on Toxic, and they squeak because it's a slightly different setup that I did compared to a 1-tonner. So on this, what I decided to do was something a bit different. Rather than mount that onto the cab, I've got my subframe, and I've built this part, that's part of my subframe. The idea is to rigidify and triangulate the chassis. So on the 1-tonner, this point mounts to the cab actually becomes part of the brace of the chassis. So my subframe, I'm using it to reinforce the chassis. So haven't spoken to my engineer about it, and I will, but I've seen a similar setup done before. This is my own design, but a similar setup. Obviously I haven't finished that off yet. So this should all lift up after I undo those points. Okay, well, hopefully this comes off. I've taken those bolts off there, off here, and this should just slide forward. It's got a little bit of weight in it. Should just slide forward, and then I can get the rubber mounts and you can see the subframe. But just before I do, Holden mount points. Holden mount points at the back here. One there and one there. Original rubbers, original mount points. And then international mount points. International mount points. So this is literally just a subframe that goes between the Holden chassis and the International. And as I said a moment ago, this whole structure makes the chassis stronger. It rigidifies it, triangulates it, and these things do not twist once you've got this sort of setup on it. Haven't done this before, but I'm convinced it'll be successful as well. So I'll slide this forward, and hopefully it's all that easy. Because I actually welded these parts on after I put that there. So I've never actually tried to move it forward. Let's just do it, see if it works. Okay, and we've got rubber bushes floating off everywhere. Don't want to lose any of those. All the standard rubber bushings. Like that. And we've got the bolts that come through them and so on. So this is my subframe. Subframe? This is YouTube. So, that's all right. That's it there. Now I have got videos of by the side of the road quite a while ago where I showed the process of making this. But we will go through and look at this in a bit more detail when the time comes to install it onto the other chassis. Because I know that a lot of people that tune into my channel find this particular thing, this particular process, quite interesting and useful. Because as I've said before, it actually adapts to more than just the Internationals, it adapts to Chevs. It's almost the same setup as I've got on my Chev, only slightly different. It's a good thing. Do it. If you've got a project and you're waiting to do it, go and do it. You know how to do it now. I don't. Get to talk to my wife. I forgot to mention my battery went flat when I was cutting the chassis up. I've got rid of most of it. I've still got these bits, mainly because I just haven't finished cutting them up. As I said, I might keep a couple of parts off them. Probably shouldn't, but probably will. What else did I do? Oh, I cut the brackets off the other chassis for the running board, so these will go on here. I'll clean them up, make them fit and all that sort of stuff. I have sanded up the fuel tank and the brace, crossmember I should say, ready for paint. I'm just working on the running boards, I'll come back to those. And I've also sanded some other stuff up. Where are they? These things here. So some need to go into etch, some need to go into top coat. So they're all good, so a bunch of things there. And I've got this running board here. So as far as the running boards go, they are going to be painted. They're going to be painted satin black, probably with the mud guards. So I've just started cleaning this up using a flap disc and a strip disc and just taking that back to bare metal. And at the moment, I've just got these nuts soaking with WD-40 so that I can separate the two pieces to get to them better. So I'm still undecided whether I'm going to put those into epoxy, because for a little bit more durability and in case I need a little bit of body fill on them or something, or whether I go straight go to etch primer like everything else. They're going to be satin black, so I'll find out soon when I have the spray gun in my hand doing it, I guess, and I'll tell you at the same time. In the meantime, I went shopping and bought heaps and heaps and heaps of consumables for my workshop, but that's neither here nor there. Okay, well that was good. Sam and the girls helped me flip the chassis over, so now it's upside down. I've gone through and done the rust repairs across the back here that I should have done earlier, and I've now got it soaking in phosphoric acid. I'm going to go through and put the top coat on this. This part here I think I'm going to leave just for the moment. I'll just put a drop sheet there or something, and I'll come back and put some etch prime over that. I've got some other things I need to etch prime so that I can just get on with the top coat here. And then once I've got the top coat on it set, I can actually start reassembling the suspension and the steering and everything, and that's not going to hold me up. So as I said, I'll paint that when it comes time to paint some other stuff that I need to paint. I'd just like to get it done, but I don't want to have to mix up some etch primer just to put that on to let it wait so that I can then sand it and then come back to it, blah, 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 when I could just get all of this in top coat. So that is what I am going to do. In the meantime, we bought the world's biggest bonnet in. We cleared 2 square meters in the entire workshop for Sam to be able to sand it, and it is coming up mint. Coming up really well. So I guess I need to paint. And just like that, we're all painted. So, got a couple of other pieces done as well. The tank straps, the cross member, the tank. The tank, I actually, I flipped it over, and I've still got to do this top surface again because the way it was sitting, I couldn't get to it. That's okay. I've got to do other painting, so there's just a couple of bands there that I wasn't able to get to. I'll sand that surface up, paint that. Chassis come up well. So when you paint something like this, when you paint a couple of sides and not the other side, you inevitably end up with a bit of overspray, but I'm really not worried. So I painted this top surface and I sort of scuffed it up on the sides, knowing that there would be some drift, and there's a little bit of powderiness on it, but it's not bad. Once again, it's a chassis, but you wouldn't do that if you're painting a car, for example. Paint half a panel and then another half. This here, I haven't done anything with, so I decided just to get the chassis done. I'll come back, do that in etch primer and top coat at some point, but at this point in time, I'm ready to start reassembling the front end. So that's a pretty exciting moment. So I can get that in, I can, I guess, bolt that cross member in. I'll make it as heavy as I possibly can so that then when we try and flip it over, it's really hard. But at least I can make some progress because I can't flip it by myself. So I guess that's what I'm just about to do. Exciting times. Putting these control arms back on, first component. I like to just get a bit of grease and just wipe it on the shaft of the bolt there, just to stop it seizing more than anything else. But if you remember when I was pulling this apart, these were hard to get out because they had a bit of rust on them. So I find just a little bit of grease on there is going to protect them. Not really for any other reason other than to stop them corroding. Now these don't have flat washers or spring washers or anything on them. That seems to be the theme, but these nuts are a locking nut, so if you've got any doubts about them, then you need to replace them. But if they're hard to get on, then it means they're going to be hard to get off, because the ends of them have sort of like a shape to them that when you do them up, it stops them from coming undone. So control arm, if you want to remember which control arm goes where, basically your bump stop goes on the flat pad just there. Look at that, the first piece of the suspension is in there. Just got to do the rest. In the meantime, I have my stub axles and my tie rods and my grease caps. I'm just putting some rattle can grey etch primer on them, I hadn't painted them, and I thought, well, I'm going to need them to reassemble this stuff, so I might just rattle can some satin black paint onto those, or some silver or whatever, just to get some paint on them. Let's continue with this. If it's not immediately obvious, the chassis is still upside down, by the way. So I've just got those nuts loosely done up. I'm not going to tighten them as such until the whole car is assembled again and back on its wheels. I'll have it at ride height, and then I'll tighten them up, and I'll do that with the uppers as well. So it's just a thing. So I've got to make a note for myself, obviously, to remember to tighten everything up, because that could be a problem otherwise. Okay, once again, in the background you can probably hear the guinea fowl squawking away. Anyone want some guinea fowl? I'm over them. Okay, got that up and control arm in there, so let's have a look at what I did. So over here, haven't got this one in yet. So the upper control arm, again this is upside down, upper control arm goes bolts into these two bolts here. Now this is also where a lot of your wheel alignment is done, your caster and camber. So on the back here there's shims that go in there, and that adjusts the position of the upper control arm. And then the steering, the tie rod ends adjust the toe, but that's for later. These are the bolts that go in there. And if you look around just underneath the head there, there's some splines, and the idea is that they push into those holes just there. And you've got to be careful not to go rattle gunning it in there, because those splines will rotate around in the hole and chew the hole out and make it bigger. Now you can get the spanner onto the back of it, but it's far more difficult when it's all assembled to get a spanner onto the back of it. So if someone's doing a wheel alignment or something like that, they're probably not going to be terribly thrilled if they can't get those bolts to just stay still when they're trying to undo the nuts on the other side. So what I'm going to do is just tap them in. Then there's already some forced splines into this from when they were previously in there, but I'll just tap them in there, and then I'll put the control arm on from the other side. So nothing too tricky, just with a hammer. Good. And the paint in there is probably going to help just close it up a bit as well. So they're good. And you'll remember I haven't got anything tightened up yet intentionally. So this part here has an offset. So you want this part facing towards the chassis. So in other words, not that way. And that way these surfaces can mate up against the chassis, or that is where the shims go in when that time comes. Well, this is a job everyone loves, said no one ever. That's packing wheel bearings. What I do like is unboxing. So we have some nice new disc brakes here. I didn't go for anything fancy. So they're not ventilated, they're not drilled or anything like that. Got new studs, and they've already got bearing casings in there. Not really sure why that is, because when you buy bearings, they come with their own casings. I'll do it with my blade. What I mean by that, so we get an axle seal, an inner bearing and an outer bearing. So if we look into this part here, you can see there's already the outer part, and if we pull this out, it actually comes with one as well. So I don't really understand that. Call me a bit naive, but normally they're a mated pair. So that part there is the part that's already knocked in there, which means that all I have to do is put that there, which is what I'm going to do, but it just seems unusual because normally they're a mated pair. I could knock that out, I guess, and put this in. I don't know. Seems like unnecessary work. So, a bit unusual. So, we're going to be putting that in there. And then there will be an inner. You tell me in the comments, should I be replacing that? It's brand new. Came in the disc. I don't know. And I'm pretty sure this side is the same. Yep, it's got that there as well. Curious. I guess I've got spare outer bearing cases for no reason that I'm ever going to use them. They sound like they might become a press tool or something. Can live with that. Okay, so the fun part, actually packing them. Now you can get tools to do this, but my tools that I use are my hands. I'm using, what am I using? Penrite high temperature bearing grease. And this is where the fun begins. Firstly, lots of rags. I get this, get some grease, and basically push it into the outer part of the race there like that. You're trying to push it through to come out of the other surface. Now you can put a great wad of grease in your hand and sort of go like that, but I don't know, this controls the amount of grease I end up everywhere a little bit. You've just got to bite the bullet with this task and be prepared to do it. Wear gloves, it's pretty horrible otherwise. So you do that and then rotate it. And then what that does, it cases the rollers there and then go again. I can bring it in from this side as well. All I'm really trying to do is fill up the entire bearing with grease so that when it gets into its task of doing its job, there's no areas that aren't coated in grease because it'll just damage the casing, the hardened casing on the bearings straight away. So plenty of it, throw it around. Try not to get it on the surface of the disc when you put it in there. So I'm rotating that. That's really hard to rotate, which means that it's got lots of grease in it, which is good. Not like a skateboard that you want it to spin really fast. It's not the go here. So let's put that over there and then get this one. Probably should have opened both. Could probably also go like that and push it through, which is what I was talking about, having a ball of it in your hand and doing that. But then still just push it through. Get it all through the surface. A liberal coating. You can get bearing packing tools where it sort of sits down on something and the grease pushes up through it. It's more something you got to see in a workshop that does it all the time rather than every now and then. Okay, there's another tool that's really good for this, and that's called a first year apprentice. Okay, coated in grease. So what I'm going to be doing is popping those in. Now what's probably going to happen also is that they're going to want to fall out. So I'm going to get the larger one, the inner one, pop it in there. But before I do that, because I can get access, I'm also going to get a couple of chunks of grease and just put them in here. It's just spare grease basically. You don't actually have to completely fill the thing, but don't be shy. Good dose of grease in there, smear it around, stops stuff from rusting, but also it's a spare dose of grease to get thrown around. And keep those bearings full. Might seem petty, but I keep wiping my hand back on here to put the grease back in there rather than a rag, because otherwise you'll end up losing half your grease on a rag. Whereas this way, you're basically putting it back into the tub to use for the next bearing. Never be afraid. Use a good amount of grease. Clean this up. Now I'm going to put the axle seal in, and it's a matter of getting this guy, putting him like that, I thought they pressed in. They don't, but probably a good idea not to put him in yet until I put the bearing in. I thought they pressed in, but they don't. So that'll just sit there. It'll probably fall out when I turn it upside down, but I'll try and leave it there and carefully flip it over so that it doesn't, so the bearing doesn't fall out. Once again, I'm trying not to get grease all over the surface. This is what brake cleaner's for. I'm going to give these a good wipe down before I start using them, putting the brake pads in and so on. Let's flip that over like that. Go like that, squash your finger. Got this one, pop it in. Let's put a little smear extra grease on this side. Grease is one of those things, if you're not used to using it, you'll end up with the stuff absolutely everywhere in places you didn't know that you had. That goes on there, and that is essentially ready to put onto the stub axle. Slide it onto the stub axle, put the washer, put the nut, tighten it up, just to get enough preload on the bearing. We'll talk about that later. And then put the split pin in. So that one's ready to go. And then bang the dust cap on. The stub axles and dust caps are just being painted at the moment. So we'll pop that one over there. That one is ready to go. Oh. So if you're just replacing the disc brakes on your car, really, this is part of the process. If your old bearings are okay, you can give them a good clean up, wash them out, you check them out. If the case hardening is still in good condition, they roll all right, they're okay to go. Pack them with grease, pop them in there. And if I was doing that, if I was using the old bearings, I'd be knocking that out and replacing it. And I'll very briefly show you how to do that without actually doing it. As I said, I'm not actually going to do it, but I'll just show you. To take the outer brace part of the bearing out, if you look just there, where are we? Just there. There's a tiny little lip there, right down the bottom. It's a couple of mil wide. You get your punch, put it on that lip, and tap it from side to side. I might as well take it out. Being sure not to damage the actual thing. Keep working around. It will eventually. I think I just damaged it, so maybe I'll be replacing it with the new one. The bigger one's got more surface area to hit, so it comes out more easily. Now it comes through. So what you were doing was hitting on the back of this, so you were hitting on this lip, just the inner part of this lip just here, and banging it through. My punch is a bit rounded off, so it slipped, and I think I damaged the surface of it. We'll have a look. I wasn't going to take it out, so I didn't damage it, but knowing that I've got a spare one, I thought for the sake of the exercise, I would show you. I just need to lift this up a little bit to give myself a bit of clearance underneath. So that's it there. That's the piece we just knocked out. And no, I didn't damage it. I thought I might have just damaged the edge there. So all I was doing was hitting down on that lip. And then to do the larger one, it's the same thing. You can see the inner circle there. That's the part that you want to, oh, right down the bottom that is. That's the part that you knock through. Just make sure this is okay. Oh look, while I've got it, I'll put a new one in. This is the new one. That was new as well, but since this is the one that comes with the bearing, I might as well put it in. So to put it in, and just sit that like that, can you generally get the old one, which is now this new old one, use it to drive it in. Being careful not to take it in too far because it will get stuck sometimes, depending on how deep into the hub the bearing is. And what you want to do is keep driving that in until it's home. You can get a large socket or something and finish it off. Very shortly, this one's going to want to start getting stuck in there. So I just need to be sure that that doesn't happen. Like that. Now what I'm going to do, that isn't quite all the way home yet. I'm just going to find a socket similar size to finish that off. You can get press tools to do things like this. Most people don't have them, but you might have a bearing or something that's nice and round. Main thing is that you don't want it to slip inside the bearing. So you just need to make sure that it's as close to the same size as possible. This is a little bit smaller, so I'm just being careful that it doesn't slide inside. You'll hear when it's home, because it makes that noise. Makes a more solid noise, then we can check it, make sure that it is bottoming out, which it is. Beautiful, we're ready to go. Clean off any of the dust that might have fallen in there. Pack the bearing and away we go. So I'll do that. Okay, they're both done. Now, what are the part numbers? So this is the kit. It came with the 2 bearings and the dust seal. So that's the number. And within it were these 2 bearings. And I think I threw the plastic bag away for the dust seal. Let's see if dust seal, that's the bearing. I haven't got the bag for the dust seal. Let's have a look. That's the dust seal. Okay, so I'm going to throw another coat of paint onto the stub axles. I should have got those painted before, but as I said, I didn't. So I'm just using some satin black acrylic. It is what it is. So I've put a coat on those, and same with the tie rod ends. Really it is, when you do a wheel line, you got to scratch the paint off those, and your dust caps when you bang on with a hammer, same thing. These should be okay. I've got the actual stubs themselves masked up, and also where the ball joints go in. Sorry, the ball joint, yeah, the ball joints go in. Just so that there's a nice clean fit in there for when those components go together. And I'm just going to throw another coat of paint on these, and I think I'll go and grab something to eat. That should be dry enough by then. This is fast dry, so that tells me it should be okay. I'll bolt the steering arms back on. We can bolt the stub axles onto the control arms, then we can put the discs on, etc, etc. Right, so as I said, I just mask up any contact areas. So like on the stub axle here. So we'll just unmask that. I just keep cans of rattle cans of satin black, gloss black, mainly satin black paint around for things like this. Sometimes you forget to paint something. that always happens when you're assembling things. You paint everything apart from that one bracket or whatever. But also sometimes it's just easier than setting up the whole spray gun to paint something small like this. So while I try and use mainly 2-pack for surfaces and mainly out of spray equipment, I'm not going to say I always do. So we'll get this stuff off and I'll show you how I've done the bolts. Again, it's not rocket science, but if you're here watching this, maybe it interests you. So I've just got the bolt through like this. I didn't really want the contact area to be painted, and I didn't really want the thread to be painted, so I got one side done. And take this off, and the threads will be clean. So the heads of the bolts and the nuts are done, are painted. Like, yeah, reality is, it scratches. I sanded it, I cleaned it, put edge primer on it, painted it. It'll scratch, because you've got to be putting a spanner on there doing it up. It's just what's going to happen. But it'll look better than having a bit of rust on it. Some people go through and they have these all zinc coated, you know, that gold zinc coating. I always put them in phosphoric acid if I'm going to leave them raw. It just gives them a little bit of extra life, but the reality is your hardware rusts, gets a surface rust on it, and if it doesn't, it's probably a show car and it might not see the weather that much. Okay, we've got those ready to go. We can start putting those discs and hubs and everything together. When you're putting your spring in, you've just got to make sure that this part here is towards the back, and it goes in to a little bit that kicks down at the back here, and there's a hole right in the control arm there, and it's an indication, I think it's just a little drain hole or something, but that there, that's pretty much where the end of the spring needs to sit. So you've just got to get it in the right place and then get it to line up. Now once it's down there, it's a little bit hard to rotate, so you have to fiddle with it a couple of times. And that actually locates it. So if we look from the top here, if you look very carefully, you can see the end of the spring is right there. I'll show you on this side. I'll rotate that one back just a couple of mil, but you can see here, it's just in the center there. And this is that little step that I'm talking about. So it has to sit in there, and that just locates it. The top on the other end, on the other hand I should say, just sits where it sits. There's a little round perch there that it sits inside of, or outside of. Other than that, it's all good. Now we can lift this together. Now I haven't got shock absorbers at the moment, so I'm not going to do anything up tight, as in the ball joints, because I'll just need to pop them again later once my shock absorbers arrive. So I'm just putting this together so you can see how it goes. I'm not sure if the ball joints are greased yet, so I will also grease those in a second. So I'm just lifting the control arm up, or pushing the top one down as it would be, but I'm pushing this one here up to get the ball joint in. Got the nut on there, and now we have upper and lower control arms in place, stub axle in place, spring in place, and normally there'd be a shock absorber in there as well. Nothing is tight. I keep repeating that. And your steering arms point towards the front, by the way. So I'll put the discs and bearings and everything on in a second. Actually, now that I think about it, I can actually do everything up because the shock absorbers, I haven't got one here to look at, but I'm sure they slide up through, the top nut gets done up, and the bottom goes just here, and then we put a bolt in there and a bolt in there because the shock absorbers are sort of crescent shaped on the end. It goes in there, so I can actually do all the ball joints and everything up. So I'll do that. Well, that was good timing. I was just installing this disc, and the courier arrived with the front and rear shock absorbers. They're nothing special, they're quite frankly a budget, and that'll do. They're shock absorbers. So got that on there, got the grease cap painted up and put on there, so that all spins quite nicely. Everything's ready to go, and now I can even drop the shock absorbers in there. I am going to have to modify the mount for the sway bar, but I'll get to that in a little while. So I'll show you what I'm doing as far as installing this. Installing is pretty easy, but about preloading the bearings. So let's have a look at that. So you've already seen me assemble this. So the grease cap on the back there is just being held in place by the fact that there's grease there. Now when I push this through, the front wheel bearing is probably going to catch and push out. I'll just try and get that through there. There we go. So that's there. Now it's not in all the way. So I'll tension it up by hand to pull it in, and then we've got to preload the bearing. What I mean by preloading the bearing is putting some tension on it without putting too much crush. These things you don't want super tight. So if I put the washer there, I should be able to just push that in a bit. It's just grabbing on something that should go in a bit easier than that. So what is it grabbing on? Oh, nothing. Nothing in particular. Never force anything. I'll tell you what I should do actually is put a little bit of grease around the surface of where that grease cover goes. Okay, so what I'm doing, find the appropriate size shifter, and I'm just going to tighten this up, and you'll soon get a feel for it. A couple of things that are telltale. You should be able to see the holes for where the split pin goes through. And there's a couple of different ways of doing split pins as well, so I'll show you how I do it. And you should know when you're getting pretty close, you should start seeing that. But keep spinning it. What you want is that it continues to spin freely. And once you feel it, you'll feel the pressure on the bearing loading up. and you'll feel that you've got a little bit more grab. The disc won't spin quite as freely. Now this is brand new bearings, brand new grease, so it's not spinning super freely as it is at the moment, which is good. It will once it beds in. But I can feel that around about now, I'm starting to, a little bit more, starting to put a little bit of load on the bearing, and what that means is that the washer is squashing the bearings together. You don't want to do that. You don't want to tighten them so that they're squashed together. It'll wear the bearings out, overheats them. So I can feel right there, that's starting to grab. So if I give that just a little bit extra, I can feel that it's starting to tighten up. So what I'm going to do is just back it off a little bit. So back it off until I'm back at one of the available holes for the split pin to go through. Now if you look in here, you can see there's a hole just there where I can put a split pin through. So once again, I can tighten that up, and once I'm feeling the pressure, and just back it off until the first available split pin hole is available. And then put your split pin in. Now, being new bearings and all the rest of it, I haven't quite got a big enough split pin. This will do the job, but I'd prefer one that was a little bit thicker, but this will do the job. The idea is that the nut can't undo. So that goes in there. Because they're new bearings, shortly after I start driving this, probably as close as 50 or 100 kilometres after I start driving this, I'll have to re-tighten the wheel bearings. Now, a couple of different ways of doing split pins. I'll take this out so you can see it a bit better. I like to just push them through like that, then bend this over the top and then cut the other one off short. I'll show you that in a moment. Other people like to have it, so I'll show you from this side. Other people like to have it so that the head is like that, and then bend the tabs around the nut like that. I'm not a fan of that. So I'm going to put that in like that. This is the way I was taught. And then I bend it over the surface like that. Flatten it down. There's a long and a short tab. I like to bend the long one over like that. It's only marginally longer. And then the short tab. And the short tab, I get it. I just bend it down like that. Cut a bit of it off. And literally just bend what is left over, down. Like that. And that way it's basically doubly secure. So the nut is tight, and the split pin, if one tab should break off, then the other is still holding it in place. So double security on your split pin. So there's that. And then, I forgot to do it on the other side. You've got to put some grease in the bearing cap and pop it on. Yeah, so just a bit of a scoop of grease in there for the same reason that I was saying earlier. Just keeps everything in good order. Re-greasing your wheel bearings is something that is a maintenance item. So, pretty hard to put too much grease onto a wheel bearing, to be honest. Don't know that it's possible at all to put too much grease onto a wheel bearing. That's there, and then I'm just going to tap my cap on. Lovely. I'm just going to take the cap off on the other side. I just forgot to put the grease in there. Then we can spin that around, check that the cap's on properly. That's all spinning freely. We're ready for the next step, which in this case is going to be shock absorbers. I've still got to rebuild the brake calipers. So as soon as I've got those rebuilt, I can put those on, but I'll show you how I'm going to go about that. Righto, let's get these shock absorbers in. So, as I said, these aren't particularly anything special, they're just shock absorbers. They come with this packaging around them. It's okay, you can cut that straight off. It's just for transport. So they've normally got them held together like that. As soon as you undo it, it should start springing apart, and that means that it's working. If you remember, the ones that I took off didn't do that. So in this particular one, they have this cap here, which is for packaging, but within it is the nylock nut in there that goes on the top in a separate packet. So this thing is nothing, that's just waste. In a separate packet, they have 3 washers and 2 bushers. Now, I'll be completely honest, I can never work out what the third washer is for. If you know, tell me, because it just doesn't seem that it is necessary to me. But what we have, got these bushers, and you have a larger bit that sticks out and a smaller bit. If I show you the two side by side, so this one has got a smaller bit that sticks out than this one, and if I flip it over like that, so each one has a large and a small. The two small go together like that and get pinched in the chassis, and I'll show you that in a moment. This is how I put them together. Fat bit to washer, fat bit to washer, skinny bits towards each other. This one, but no bloody idea where it goes. I suspect it might be supposed to go under there like that on the top of the tower or something, but I don't know. I've never used them. I've never had any problems. If I'm being stupid, please tell me. If you're a suspension and steering guy, Stewie, let me know. Do I need to put it on there? I'm not putting it on there. Okay, so I'm sure they wouldn't send me it if it wasn't meant to be used, but you know. So washer on the shock absorber. Big part of the bush. This is the way I'm doing it. Big part of the bushing facing that washer. Then this is going to go through this opening in the control arm. And what I need to do is make sure that that little bit that I was talking about goes through the hole right down the bottom there, the circle in the middle. That's where the inner collar of that bushing goes through, and it sits in there snugly. And the reason I don't use that other part is that it just seems that it'd get in the way, because what happens is that when these two come together, what you've got is that you've got a bushing that goes through that hole that I showed you a moment ago. Rubber right the way around. They press in there nice. I could sit the bush in there and actually hold it in place just with the contact of that little bit, and it stops the shaft of the shock absorber from hitting it. So the metal bit I just don't get. Anyway, so and then that goes on the other end. Let's slide this in, and the only other thing to be aware of is that, see how that's an angled offset? Then it's got to angle the same direction that the control arm is leaning, which is basically pointing down towards the center. Okay, looking from what would normally be the top, so for me, the bottom, you can see the bushing, and that narrow sleeve, that end there, is sticking through. So I'm going to put this end in, and see how it just holds there? That's because it's a nice snug fit. So then I'm going to pop this in, and if I can lay my hand on the nut, now I just put this on. Now I am going to be holding this shock absorber from the other end for a minute. No, I'm not, don't need to. Now see that little flat section there? You need to hold that while you're doing up that nut. So put the spanner on, and this is metric because that seems to be what happens when you buy new stuff. And you just hold that little double D bit in the center and do this up. Now, I'm not going to make you watch all this because it's pretty tedious and boring, but I'll show you once I've got it a bit tighter. Okay, so I've got that tight. Now, I just tighten that until it's firm. There's a little bit of squash on the bush without it bulging. You do it up too much, it'll just split. So the idea is just to keep it firm. Let's have a look from the underside, which in my case is the top. So we have these. This is now around the wrong way, so I can turn that like that. Then I can compress the shock down, and you can see it'll push back out again. But I can compress it down and hold it in place. Now this didn't come with any bolts or anything, so I'm using the original bolts, and I honestly can't remember whether there was washers on there or not, but I like putting washers on things, so I'm putting a couple of spring washers on there. And so you see these crescent shaped parts here, it's got the original bolts, and I just put a spring washer on there and it compressed that down. Not much pressure on it. Try and find the hole. Get them each in a couple of threads and then get them tight, and then shock absorbers are installed. This one on this side's been giving me a little bit of grief. I think the thread, yeah, thread's not fantastic. Anyway, I'll tighten those up. Okay, so I did just record me assembling this, but of course the microphone wasn't turned on. So I'll just explain to you what I said. This is your tie rod. It has a left thread and a right thread. This is your tie rod ends. You get one with a left thread and one with a right thread. And what happens is that they screw on, so they both screw on like that. So one doesn't go the opposite to the other. So what happens is that when you turn the tie rod, it will move in or out of this equally. So when you're setting these up, get the nut that's there in the first place, this nut here, and wind it halfway along the threads. I won't take it right the way off, but there's that much thread on that side as well. And that way you can wind it when you're adjusting your wheel alignment, your toe setting, you can wind it in an equal amount to winding it out to get it adjusted. Now these came with the grease nipples not installed, so I installed those. Always be careful not to do them up too tight because you can snap them. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So I've done the other one as well, and I will just show you where they go. So I'm sure if you're at this stage you know where they go, but let's have a look. They come in from underneath. Doesn't matter which one goes left and which one goes right. They come in from underneath. This is tapered. When I say they come in from underneath, they actually come in from, this is the underneath. So this is tapered, as is this part of the tie rod end just here. So it gets fatter as it gets up closer to there. So you'll soon know if it's in upside down, but you get that, just sort of put a bit of pressure on it to push it down, put the nut on, and then just exactly the same as your ball joint, when you tighten it up, it pulls down. Unless you drop the nut, it pulls down into the steering arm and locks itself in place. So you have to do the nut up, then put a split pin through and so on. So what you end up with is one of these on this side, one of these on this side, and then you need something to join them together. And that is this piece, the steering link, or sometimes referred to as the drag link, but I won't go in down that path. So over here we have the idler arm. So the idler arm just sits there bolted to the chassis. It's got its own grease nipple, comes across here. So if you pay attention to the way this is set up, the tie rod end comes in, goes into that hole. It's tapered so it can only go one way. The idler arm comes here, This has a ball joint on it. It goes into the idler arm. The idler arm is tapered. It can only go one way. Over here, the tie rod end comes in, goes into there. It's tapered, it can only go one way. This goes into the pitman arm, and that's right, it's tapered, it can only go one way. And the pitman arm is on the bottom of the steering box, and the steering box bolts there. So it can be a bit confusing if you pull this apart and you don't pay attention to how it was when you pulled it apart. So I'll just really make it clear. On the steering box end, you've got this tab that's sticking out on the end of the steering link. That's where the tie rod end goes in. The grease nipples on the tie rod ends point towards the control arm. The ball joint for the steering box for the pitman arm comes in, it points up, goes into the bottom of the pitman arm. Then on this end, the ball joint for the idler arm goes up, goes into the pitman, the idler arm, and the tie rod end comes in from the back. The grease nipple is near the control arm. So the biggest difference here, you can see the tie rod end is coming in, not at the end. On this one, it's coming in on the end. You can actually put them on the wrong way and it won't work. So that's the way it goes. Now, let's have a look at this. As it is at the moment, that wheel is pointing almost perfectly forward. This one over here is pointing out that way, over there. Now, to adjust that, and bearing in mind that I haven't got a steering box on here, so all those linkages are sort of flopping around, but to adjust that, what you would do is, when they're doing a wheel alignment, they would make it so that both wheels are pointing out or in equally, so they'd have both wheels in this case pointing out, they'd be pointing this way, and then adjust the tie rod ends, both of them equally, one way or the other way, to bring those wheels in equally. That way you can get your steering wheel centered, you get the same amount of adjustment on either side, and it adjusts the toe to where it's meant to be. Okay, well, I haven't got a rebuilt steering box or anything for this at the moment, so we'll see how that goes as far as installing that. Now, I think I may have created a problem for myself with that sway bar, because when I put the idler arm on, it looks awfully close to the sway bar, as in it's touching at the moment, because I've moved the sway bar back. Now, I didn't think it'd matter, but maybe I was wrong. But nothing is tight at the moment, so I'm not going to go panicking and changing anything, but it's not going to surprise me if I have to take that off, weld it up, drill some new holes and do all that again. But we'll worry about that when that time comes. I think that's looking lovely. What do you reckon? I'm super thrilled. I reckon she's coming along really well. So we have the chassis nearly ready to start putting the subframe on. And you know what happens after that? More painting. And we can put the body on. But I've got a little trick up my sleeve there. It's not really a trick. We're going full hog on this project. I'll reveal it later. But that thing is going to go through a whole life-changing experience. But you will have to keep tuning in to see how that pans out. It's going to be another few videos yet, but we will get there. So once again, I really appreciate you spending your time watching me work. I hope you enjoyed that relax while I was doing that. So why don't you go and grab an angle grinder and cut something up. But remember, stay safe doing it. And once again, thanks to everyone who's been subscribing. The numbers have really gone up, and that makes me a happy boy. Until next time, you be safe. And of course, it'd be really remiss of me not to acknowledge the fact that I put a call out for you guys and girls to share your projects with me, and I'd put them up on my Toxic Garage Facebook page. Well, I had Chris, Brian and Alex flick through some photos, and had some nice chats with these guys as well about the projects they're on. Alex putting a light bar on and a transmission cooler, and Chris and Brian had some really nice one-tonners, and I mean really nice one-tonners. I look forward to seeing those as they finish. Very impressive cars. So once again, guys, if you've got a project and you want to share it with the world, well, my Facebook page could be the place to do that. Happy to put it up there. I love seeing other people's work. I get ideas, and both those guys said, maybe I could get an idea from those. No, I'm going to steal ideas. Anyway, thanks again. Take care.